Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Be Natural podcast with our friend and 1OB hero, Nigel Hylands. So we're doing something a little different on this week's episode of the podcast. We're here at Nigel's pool room and we're going to play a bit of pool and have a chat. So you start out there.
What, the pool balls?
I'd prefer if you did that, yes.
Okay. Okay.
We've started already. We've started already.
Welcome to my pool room.
Yeah.
This is where,
The magic happens.
whenever I'm not playing a cornet, you'll find me.
So, yeah, is that why, when we talked about somewhere special to do this, I mean, for me it was a no-brainer to come here. Is this genuinely where you'll be whenever you're not playing your cornet? Because I know you don't practice that much, so...
Somewhere special. They wouldn't let me go to Amsterdam, so we had to come here instead, you know, so it's just... Yes, no, I contrary to a lot of popular belief, I do spend a fair bit of my free time practicing, but maybe once a week I'll get a chance to come into the table and have a rattle with the balls.
But for people that have never seen you play pool before, you are an absolute shark, and like within the band, it's well known that like your pool playing is probably something none of us can ever even try to get close to. But where did your love for pool start, or when did you start getting interested in that? Because you do, like, you've shown me training drills and stuff before, so you're obviously interested in it. When did that start?
Well, I grew up in the year of Alex Higgins, which was pretty good, and I have a shocking memory of my childhood, but one of the things I do remember is being woken up whenever he won his first World Championship to watch him win it with my parents, and that sort of was that love of snooker. There was nothing else on TV. It was either wrestling, but he was the only thing, and I didn't really...
Giant Haystacks?
Yeah, Big Daddy, and it was a Big Shirley, and that was it, and Kendo Nagasaki and all those boys, but it wasn't really my thing, but the snooker was. And I just remember when we were kids, my dad used to do a lot of stuff with bands up around Donegal and things, and every pub we ever went to, which was the good old days when you just drag your kids into the pubs and got them a bag of Tato and sat them in the corner or got them a game of pool and then forgot about them for a while while everybody else was drinking and then drove home. It's the good old days. We would have just killed you for a pool table. So that sort of started it. And the only time I started playing, I would have gone down with my mates when I was doing my O-levels and A-levels. After school, I'd go down and play in Portadown in the local snooker club, but I was always a bit rubbish at snooker. And it was a wee bit easier to be okay at pool. And then there was a pool hall opened when I was starting my A-levels in Portadown, and it was a guy who played in the Northern Ireland team who ran it.
Right.
And
as in Northern Ireland football?
No, Northern Ireland pool team.
Right, okay.
Back then, in about 84, 85, and we used to quietly sneak away from school and go down and spend the day playing pool down there with him.
So excuse my ignorance, Northern Ireland pool team, I'm not being funny, I didn't know we had one.
Yeah.
So what do they compete in? Is there like a pool World Cup or something that there would have been?
But you've got the Moscone Cup and things like that now, which is Europe against America, but there are lots and lots and lots of national pool things. It's been happening since the 80s, probably well before that. 8-ball stuff, before the 9-ball got big. But there's qualifying tournaments, there's Q School, as they call it, like the golf for the pool. There's qualifying, have it in Blackpool, funny enough, for all us brass band nerds. They have it in the Tower, exactly where we have the Open and the
Grand
Shade qualifying. And that's where you go and you qualify for a lot of the pool tournaments and things like that. So, but he would have played for them, and he was quite good, and he just used to hustle us out of our dinner money.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things we just had to try and beat him, and that sort of, you used to go down and you used to get absolutely walloped.
Yeah. And
then eventually you were like trying to just at least get one
like
or two balls behind him. Yeah, or not even a frame, but even sort of not lose by 6 balls on the table,
So where do you think, I mean, you and I talk about snooker every time it's on. Did you mean that?
Of course he did.
You and I talk about snooker every time it's on, but we both love playing pool. Why do you think pool's never taken off in the same way that snooker has in terms of a televised audience? Like I would say much more people have a go at pool than have a go at snooker.
But it sort of has a bit. There's Ultimate Pool now has its own channel, and there's a massive online following.
Yeah.
There would be, and at the weekends, like you can go on a YouTube and watch, even here in Ireland tonight, somewhere in Ireland, probably a couple of different places, there'll be 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand cash matches being played.
Why are we here? Why are we not there?
Yeah, I happened to play against one time. I was down with Olivia, my wife's brother-in-law, down in Tullamore, and we happened to wander in against a couple of the which would you want to call them, semi-pros, but the money players.
Yeah.
In one of the pubs, and yeah, they're different. Different groovy. They just don't miss.
Last question on pool, I suppose. I think I know the answer to this. Pool and snooker. What's your favourite memory around a pool or snooker table? I can have a guess.
I know, but snooker was the time at which I have, and most people probably are bored hearing it, about the time we were at it was an exhibition match down in the waterfront, and Ronnie O'Sullivan was playing, Ken Doherty was playing, Jimmy White was playing, and Stephen Henry, and John Virgo was doing the compare.
Yeah.
And there was a raffle at half time, and we bought a ticket, and the prize was to have a frame of snooker against the pros, or with the pros, play a game of doubles against another Joe Schmo out of the audience, and you'd be playing with a pro, and then Joe Schmo would be playing with one of the other pros in a game of doubles. And Olivia, we were sitting there, and Olivia's ticket, she called up and she goes, God damn, I've got this ticket. So I just grabbed it off her and put my hand up, and down I went, and to my annoyance, even to this day, I get paired with Ken Doherty, and we were against Ronnie O'Sullivan and some guy called Alan.
Right.
He was on crutches.
Did he use that instead of a key?
But I guess I actually remember going up, and we went up. It was a proper pro table, so it was like playing on that wooden floor. It was so fast, and we went up, and they handed us a cue. You're sitting in the wee booths, and they put your name up. So then, and you're sitting there, and you can look into the audience, and you can see there's a screen showing what the TV's showing. So you're sitting there, and you can see yourself with your name, and you're just like they do with the pros. But I'm sitting there, and every time I played, Ronnie O'Sullivan was coming on after me.
Amazing.
And I went up to take the first shot, and it was a bag of nerves. That was a great night. That was really good. But pool, I don't know. The pool, there's something about it. I love any time. I like playing and messing around, but it's different when we're not playing for anything. It's just messing around. But if you're playing for something, it's completely different. It's like playing the cornet.
Yeah,
it's like
means something.
I love playing the cornet when we're not being judged.
Yeah,
like when we're doing like the small ensemble stuff like that. You can't shut me up. I'm always hyper because I'm enjoying it. It's just different. And same with pool. If you're not trying to prove anything, you're not trying to win anything. If you're just tootling about and knocking the balls about, you don't. It's not that you're not concentrating, but it's a lot more enjoyable. You're not under any pressure just to sort of whack the balls around.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the band. I mean, one of my fondest memories of the band was my second away trip with the band when we went to the Scottish Open in Perth, and you were chairman, and you hired out a pool hall somewhere. I can't remember the name of it, to be honest, but we just took over an area, and you just basically put on an exhibition, and it was incredible. But you can tell when you put it on, that you want to play, and it was a good snooker, and that you've played serious, and when you're just wanting to have a laugh, and it's really evident because you can tell you're just trying to.
That's a lovely shot.
Hey, got that in common.
Yeah.
You're just wanting everybody else to enjoy it, and you're not that bothered about people thinking you're good because you've proven yourself. Moving away from pool, you mentioned a few people in there. We'll start with your dad. So you grew up in Portadown?
Well, we actually grew up in Hollywood.
Right.
So we lived in Hollywood until I was 10.
Right. Okay.
So we had a house in Hollywood, and that's where I started banding. My dad was originally a flute player. I played in the 39th with James Galway, was sort of that same era.
Wow.
He was a good piccolo player with that, and he played with Ormo Military and stuff like that whenever they were sort of at their pomp, doing the BBC broadcasts and things like that.
Class.
And then he started conducting in his early 20s. He conducted Ormo Military then as well, and a number of different bands, got into brass bands as well. Third Carrick, Laganville.
This is your dad?
Yeah, my dad did, yeah. But he was taking, how I got into bands then was, he was taking Third Carrick at the time. And it was a time where I must have been about 7 years old, and they were just looking more cornet players like we were looking players, and there wasn't a youth setup the way we have it now, or we were lucky enough with it now. And I just got handed a cornet one day, and away I went to the rehearsals with my dad down in Carrick, you know. So that's how I started playing, was with my dad in Third Carrick in the back row.
And it's fair to say your dad had a massive impact on your brass band in life, and probably why you're driven the way you're driven now around banding is a big part of his influence. What was it like when you moved from Carrick and the two of you moved to Portadown to run a band together, basically?
It was, well, see, Third Carrick was brilliant and fantastic memories, because if you imagine, there's me whenever I was 10 in Third Carrick and getting to go out on whatever it was, a Tuesday, and I can't even remember, a Tuesday and a Friday night, or whatever the hell nights it was just like the 2 nights a week, and used to go down and just after band, Dad went and got a pint, and then I would have gone and stayed with the Bindings. He would still be Ruth,
yeah,
and her family, her brother Tommy and stuff like that. I'd have been friends with, and I'd gone there around to their house and spent the evening there with their mother and their granny, and then we'd stop and got a posse supper with my dad on the way home.
Brilliant.
And then when we moved to Portadown, we did it for about a year or two. My dad still took them, and we travelled up and down, but Portadown to Carrick,
2 hour round trip.
Yeah, it's a long and rough. Like it was too far. And then when we gave up, obviously I wasn't driving, so I had to give it up. But my dad gave up Third Carrick. We decided to start their own brass band called Craigavon Concert Brass, which was just a new brass band. And to be fair to my dad, well, he set it all up. He did it all. They had to get funding for instruments. They didn't have any instruments. Didn't have any players. And they set up Craigavon Concert Brass, which was very successful actually for the 2 or 3 years that it sort of ran. We did very well and got some very good players came out of it. And then,
how old would you have been when that was going on?
12.
She's still really young. It's
Yeah,
not like,
yeah, I don't know. And it was like, because there weren't no other players around. I wasn't a player at that sort of age. I'd only been playing for 4 or 5 years, and I wasn't any real good. But it was sort of, I knew which end of a cornet to hold.
yeah.
So I ended up being principal of that band at that age. So it was, and then 13, 14, my parents split up, and whenever they split up, the band sort of fell by the wayside, and Craigavon sort of lasted. Concert Brass landed for a wee bit longer, and I didn't go anymore, and that sort of fell by the wayside. So,
Were you still in Portadown after you were with us? But
yeah, I was there. We stayed in Portadown until I moved back down to Belfast when I was in my 20s. But after they split up, I stopped going to Craigavon Concert Brass, and then I must have been 2 or 3 months out of that, and I got a knock at the door. My mum got a knock at the door. I was about 13 or 14, and there was a guy from St Mark's, Arthur Scarlett, standing at the door and asked would I come down and play with them. So I went down to St Mark's when I was about, I think it was 13 or 14. I was probably nearly 14, and I played with St Mark's for 17 years now.
Did you eventually ended up in the principal seat, but did you go straight in principal? Or how did that
No. Arthur was the principal. I played, and then Arthur was very kind to me. He's a very gracious guy, a very, very musical guy, and a bit like myself, he'd never had any real sort of formal training on the cornet, but he watercoloured him after a couple of months. He very graciously stepped down and let me take the principal seat. When I was about 14, I think it was, when I took that one.
So I mean, you're saying you weren't much of a player at that age, but you clearly were. If somebody's knocking on your door, I mean, he hasn't knocked on that door not thinking, here's my successor. He's knocked on that door thinking, there's a bit of talent. And how I know that he's done it is you and I have done that before. where you go and identify talent and you see what's coming down the line?
It was the level I was at the time, you know, it's at a different level. They were fantastic. It was a brilliant time of my life, and I have unbelievable memories of St Mark's and the time whenever I played with them. I must have had a wee bit of something about me. Whenever I was younger, I was taught by Ronnie Kennedy. I used to go every Saturday morning, and he used to give me cornet lessons, who is one of the old boy founders, near enough, and all of his family are legends within the band as principal cornet players and flugel players and horn players. Every one of them an amazing player. I remember going into Ronnie's and getting lessons every Saturday morning, and it was proper old school. If you played wrong notes or you didn't have your fingers aligned properly on your valves, you got a rap in the knuckles. Or if you hadn't practiced, it was quite literally, right, off you go. Give me the money for the lesson. Sorry, see you next week.
Get practicing.
Yeah, don't waste some time. It was proper. And the old thing of a cornet hanging on a string and going in and the no pressure method. No pressure buzzing. That used to be part of the Orban thing that you used to see. But that was one of the things that inspired me, was his son Eddie, who was the principal of the Old Boys, funnily enough, back then. Used to hear him practicing in the room next door. And
that was the challenge.
It was a different level. Like, I didn't have any real technical music. I didn't do any grades. I never done any grades moving through, just the way it sort of fell through the cracks. And I was playing in a brass band. I didn't take any lessons in school, so I didn't do any theory exams.
Yeah.
So I was doing loads of playing, but I wasn't really being taught how to play the instrument properly, and I wasn't being taught any real technique, which has come back to bite me later on in life. As you know, I detest sight reading, and it's puts me completely on edge whenever I have to sight read something.
Yeah.
And it's because I don't have any technical background. I've been playing, and I was lucky enough that I had a reasonably good sound, and it could sort of carry me through for a lot of years.
Yeah.
But whenever you get to a band sort of like the Old Boys, those flaws or
exposed to a bit more.
The things that you're not able to do are more apparent, and the technical stuff wasn't. Now the technical playing's got a wee bit better, but it'll never ever be the like of. Never going to be like what Paul's is, or I'll never be going to see the like of what Lou or Connor is at now, or Andy. They have the what I call it. Obviously, they've come through properly with all the lessons, and they've been taught properly as they come through. But sound something you either have or you don't. Technique is just hard work, and I was a lazy little bollocks whenever I was younger, and I never put any work in for it. Like.
You talked a bit there about your mum and dad split up. That's being there myself. That's nothing that a young child wants to go through. A wee bit traumatic, well, quite a bit traumatic. But there was something that happened when you were a later teenager that is bound to have changed your life forever. I don't know if you want to talk about that or.
Yeah, no, it's something I don't really talk about that much, but I've no problem with it because I'm with my friends. But I still think going back, when you say it doesn't, a parent splitting up doesn't affect it, it definitely does. I mean, it does. It's one of those things that it changes your life. It's like it sort of changed the path I was going on. We were with that Craigavon concert brass, blah blah blah, family unit, and then all of a sudden you're not.
Yeah.
You know, and you're heading off. And great believer that things happen for a reason. And you know, you wouldn't be where you are if they didn't happen. So it wasn't a bad thing that happened. It was just something that happened. But you carry some sort of trauma from it as you go on. The thing you're talking about obviously is the time when I was 19. Coming back from I was at university. I was 20 actually. I was in the third year at university in London and was back for Christmas. And I'm one of 4 children. I have 3 sisters, 2 older and 1 younger. We were coming back from the Coach nightclub in Barnbridge. I was in the backseat of a car with my sister and 2 of my friends. And the car skidded in ice. I was home for Christmas and we'd gone out to celebrate, and it skidded on ice on the back roads coming back from Banbridge, and it spun out into a corner into the path with another car that was coming along, and my sister, who was just turned 19 at the time, sitting in the back row of the seats. I was on the left hand side, she was on the right hand side of the back seats of the car, and the roof caved in and on impact and broke her neck and killed her instantly. So
And like that's, I think we've talked about that maybe once in the time I knew you, and I would consider, like, we talk almost every day on the phone. That experience is bound, you talk about trauma, that was bound to be something that lives with you now. I mean, as your friend, I see it in you sometimes, even when we're having committee meetings or whatever. I don't think you're going to that place, but I can see it in you that you're not always able to be in the room. You have to take yourself out of the room. Do you notice that in yourself, or is it something?
Well, you develop coping mechanisms. It's probably one of the reasons that I've stuck around bands, and I know it's not an advertisement because it probably will be just brass players that are watching this, but it's amazing what a band gives you in the way of a family. Whenever that happened, that was obviously, it was horrendous. But you know, the people in St Mark's rallied round and were great friends to me. But whenever I had to go back over to London, obviously I was in the year out, so I was working, so I had to go back over to London. Going to London anyway, whenever I went over to London in 2000, I wish, in 1987, when I'd just gone, I was still 17, just going 18, and it was a hugely lonely place. Like, it was, no mobile phones. If you wanted to talk to one of your parents, or talk to your, very close to my mum, it was a phone card. It was a card. There was one phone downstairs in the halls of residence, and you had to like get a. It was, you probably don't even know what they are, but it was you basically get credit on a little card, like a credit card, and put it into a phone, and then the phone took the amount of money off it, and that's what and you didn't have a whole lot of money. Getting back here to Northern Ireland was a 12-hour bus journey. It wasn't jumping on an EasyJet flight. So if you ever wanted to come home or you were feeling homesick, you had to. It was a two-day trek, quite literally. And it was £100, which was huge money back then when you didn't have anything. So going there originally had been pretty lonely. And I had found Full Brass. I played with them for a while.
Right, okay.
I just searched out a band and played with them, but again, my sound was good, but this is where again my technique sort of let me down. I remember going to one of the first rehearsals and they were playing Scheherazade or something like that, and I remember playing in the back row for them, and I remember whenever it came, I can't remember, I was playing rep or second or something, and there was a bit, and I remember playing it and sort of like the front row sort of stopping and looking around, but then when I got into all the fast stuff, the wheels came off. I just turned back around again and just like, alright, okay. Get through that, it was lovely, but it was, apart from that, it was quite lonely then to go back after trying to process, when you were 20, trying to process the death of your younger sister, who I was very close with. It was hard, it was lonely.
Do you think the person you were before that became somebody different after that?
Oh, 100%. I think what, as I said, and I've said to you many a time, that, these things happen and they are tragic, and of course you reverse them if you can, but we're never going to be able to do that. So you've got to embrace who they make you. Now, I sort of lost control for, I don't know, after that happened, maybe 3 or 4 years.
In what way?
You name it. I did that. I lost control. I ended up like, I stopped playing the cornet for a while. I remember St Mark's bring me back for a contest. It must have been the BBL just after. Must have been the BBL just after it happened, so it would have been the following year, and they paid, by that stage, like St Mark's paid the flight and the BA to fly me back for the contest, and whatever it was, a Thursday rehearsal and Friday rehearsal and playing the contest on a Saturday, and I hadn't been practicing at all because I was just so distracted, and I was probably like drinking and partying and whatever else I was doing, trying to distract myself. And I remember going on stage and I played like an absolute balloon, and I just thought, right now I can't. It was the pressure and everything just sort of. I remember sitting on stage, and it's different now because you can sort of use it as a memory. Whenever I go on stage, my nerves on stage now would be rock solid, but that took a hell of a while to straighten out. But I remember that time with St Mark's and all the emotion and everything, just sitting on stage, and it was. I know we joke about quite literally about getting up. I would joke saying, "Oh, if we make a mess of this, we'll have to get up off stage." I remember saying with distant memories with Louis saying, "If we mess up this first 2 staves, we'll just get up and walk off stage, forget about it." And of course, you're not going to do that now. You're not going to mess it up either. But back then, I was as close to ever walking off stage as I'd ever been. It was a horrible feeling, and I just fell out of love with bands, with everything. And just looked for distractions in any corner I could find them.
Not going into the detail of all that, but for me, in my life, when I have went through stuff, losing babies, two children, through miscarriage, one of the first people I phoned after my parents is you, and your counsel and your ability to talk people, because I know you've helped others as well through trauma, is a real gift. Is that something you recognise in yourself, and that experience going through that horrendous negative experience, that it's given you a skill set that not everybody has to help people when they go through something traumatic as well?
I think you gather up experience, and it sounds real old manly, and I don't want to do what I did in the other documentary and sound, oh, woe is me, and have the Coldplay soundtrack in the background. You gather experience on the way through, and everything you do and everything you say has a consequence. Now, an immediate or long-term consequence, and you sort of train yourself in the quieter moments. Like there was a lot of time I spent on my own back then. A lot of time, whenever I wasn't drinking and partying and whatever else I was doing, trying to distract myself. I'm trying to get control again of my life and find ways to control things. Everything has a consequence of what you say, and I think it's only over time that you realise that, and it's only as you get older and you've had so many thumps and bangs, and there's nothing like experience to teach you it, and it's unfortunate, but it's a painful way you will learn, and you've got to, in your milliseconds before you speak, before you do something, you've got to realise the consequences of what you are about to say, or what you're going to do, or what before you do it and before you can say it. And you've got to try and be aware and be in the moment, and temper. So if you're about to say something, spin it through your mind in milliseconds and say, right, if I say this, what effect's that going to have to what they think, what they feel, what they're going to do, what somebody else is going to think, what somebody else is going to do, and then say it or don't say it, or alter what you're going to say. And it means in the tireder moments, I'd be a lot quieter because I don't have the speed to process that, or I'd be afraid that I didn't process it and did say something to sort of hurt somebody. But if I'm feeling up and I'm sort of spinning along and good, do what I do and just talk a lot of nonsense and keep going all the time, and your brain's working quicker and faster and allows you to do that. But yeah, being aware of the consequences of what you do is a great thing. And the other thing is sort of time makes you realise that a lot of what people say to you, or why people say things to you, or people are mainly nasty or mean things, and that sounds a bit like nasty or mean things, but there's lots of crap. That's why I don't do social media and I don't do Facebook and things like that. And that just annoys me but a lot of it is because of people's lack of self-esteem of their own, and people will try and hurt you or say things because they're only trying to make themselves feel better by winning a wee small victory in their life, or what they see has been a small victory. And your response to that, and my response to that, I've got to always think, why am I responding to that? So a lot of people do that because they have low self-esteem in themselves, and then you can quite easily fall into the trap that I will get angry about something, and if I just blurt it out, I have to say to myself, no, why am I angry with them? I know why they've made me angry, but why am I angry with them? And sometimes my responses, or anybody's responses, you need to sort of temper that. Well, why am I getting cross about this? You know, and it usually leads back to something that's happened in your life, or something somebody said to you, you know, being bullied as a child, or, you know, parents splitting up, or losing a sibling, or a multitude of different things that could happen in a way through life. So it's really who you are now, and hopefully who, if you have any experience. But some people, like, I mean, you know, I've talked to a couple of people who would listen. You listen, which foolish or whatever way you want to take it. A lot of people don't, and that's fair. That's up to them. And I, you know, I would never even think of saying or giving anybody life advice. It wouldn't. Nathan was somebody would have had a lot of chats with Nathan Moore and I whenever he was younger, and he'd just come back from uni. I would have had a lot of chats like that with Nathan and stuff like that. But that's probably about the only two. Andy Milligan, maybe he's the other one as well. You know, but it's not like you're sitting out doling out advice. I mean, who am I to give out advice, you know, apart from somebody who's got a wee bit of experience. Like.
And what I don't disagree with. I think you're a very good advice giver. Sorry, I do disagree with you. I think you're a very good advice giver. What was the switch that took you from that time of lack of control to setting your life on a different path? Or was it not a switch? Was it a progression?
It was quite a long progression. I know I hear you talking about your addictions and things like that, and we all have them, and anybody who says they don't, they're just quite literally lying, or they're not aware of them, but they do have them, you know. And what I found myself was grasping of trying to get control again of your life and bring it back into something before some other damage was done, was trying to control the controllables, and that for me would have been my weight, would also have been the running, which later morphed into practicing the cornet quite a bit later on, as you can only gather. But you know, controlling your weight and controlling things like your fitness through running and things like that is where you can control your life. You set your boundaries, and if you say, I'm only going to eat this much, or I'm going to look like this, or weigh this much, or I'm going to run this far every day and do that much, that's how you control your life, and all of a sudden things are back in control again, even if it's just an imaginary control, but you feel in control of it because you've achieved. And even now, there's me, quite literally an old man, nearly 60, and I still every day will go for a run, because that's my sort of control mechanism, that I know if I get my running during the day, that, you know, the world is in order, life's in order, let's move on after that. You know, it's that wee control mechanism that I still have, and I just can't get rid of it.
So, life's back in control. You're in your mid to late 20s. When does Olivia come into your life?
I had a rather checkered sort of employment career. As you gathered, whenever I was doing my O-levels and my A-levels, I was a little bit wayward or distracted. I would have gone on and played pool. I managed to duff my way through my A-levels and get 3 Ds. And at one stage I applied for Neller Hall to go to music, and I also and I got accepted, and I was also
what was the process for that?
I had to apply then as well. You enjoy this one even better, was the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
What? A mountie?
To play.
This boy wanted to go hunting moose.
To play in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police band, which was a thing back then in the 80s, where I was to go and to go to an interview for that over in London. Wow. But then I went through clearing, and my dad, rightly so, thankfully, managed to talk me into going over to do a straight management degree in London, and for some strange reason South Bank Poly let me do it with my 3 days. But when I was there, I buckled down and worked and got a good degree out of it. And then whenever I came out in the 80s, there was the late 80s, there was no surveying jobs, or there were no surveying jobs around, so I went to the postgrad in management, and when I was doing a postgrad in management, I got poached by a company who were in doing some management consultancy for one of the firms I was in, doing an internship with as part of the postgrad, So whenever I finished the postgrad, I went and worked for them, and that entailed me going around companies and giving management systems training to professional people who were running construction companies. And I hadn't an absolute Scooby-Doo what I was doing. It was BS 5750 quality management systems back then. It was sort of brought about by the nuclear industry. A set of procedures for business management, and we were applying them to construction companies. And I ended up going around Ireland, giving training courses and going into different companies that were hugely successful. And there's me 22, 23, 24 trying to tell them how to make their businesses better, and I hadn't a clue.
Is that off the back of Chernobyl, that kind of thing?
Well, it was more whenever they were building nuclear facilities, they had to make sure that they built them properly and didn't make mistakes on the way through.
Right, so you definitely didn't work on Chernobyl.
I get it now. Cheeky bollocks. But when I was working for that firm, I was auditing one of the. Ended up after doing that for a few years, I got sort of poached by an auditing company like BSI, British Standards Institute. It was a company called CQA, and I used to go around construction companies auditing their management systems. And very professionally when I was in there in Olivia, and one of the ones down in Tullamore, steel stockholders and building suppliers, and just hit it off nearly straight away with her. And I would have visited every 6 months, and after I think it was about the third visit, I finally plucked up the courage to ask her out for a drink. We went out for a drink, and I think something like, God, Olivia will shoot me, but it was something like 3 months later we were engaged. You know, it was a bit of a flash bang wallop one, you know. Class. But here's this 25 years later, married with the 2 boys, you know. Amazing. So that's how I met her, was doing a very unprofessional thing of being a consultant in a firm and asking her out for a drink.
So the knock-on effect of you actually started listening to what your dad said, set you on a journey to where we are today with Olivia and the 2 boys, which butterfly effect when you think about it. Like, if you'd gone to Bay Mounty, that never would have happened, which is crazy.
Yeah, who knows what I would have been doing.
Yeah,
you know, chasing moose. Exactly. Well, I did a lot of that when I was in London.
So you end up back here. How did you make the move back from London to here full time then?
I came back from uni, as I said. There were no jobs. I'd have my fill of London. It's a very lonely place. It's a lovely place to visit. It's a lovely place to visit as a tourist, but to actually live there and you travel on the tube every day. And our office was as swanky as it sounded. It was in Vere Street, which is just off Oxford Street, near Bond Street, and it was a bloody nightmare because the tourists were everywhere, and you know, just getting in and out of work was horrible, and the tube, it was just horrible. Go back and you couldn't afford anything else, and a flat the size of that toilet. And it was just a horrible place to live. When you don't have money and you were, just scraping a living or a student, it's not a nice place to live. When you come back here, you just realise what you have. So that's why I came back to Northern Ireland and tried to get a job here. So.
And you end up going from that to working with your dad?
Mm-hmm. So I was working. I ended up working for that assessment company, CQA, for about 7 years or so, and that was going very well. But my dad was a principal at Portadown Tech, and had given that up to focus on building, something he did when he was younger. And he had got a wee bit bigger and bought a land where we were going to do an apartment block of 21 apartments over in Bangor, and he needed somebody to help him. He was talking about bringing in a foreman, so I said, look, I'll give up my job and I'll come and work with you, if that's what you want, to give you a hand with it. And he was amenable to it, so I gave up a very well paying job as a management consultant to take quite a menial job as a labourer on the site again, and I was under no illusion, you know, and if I was under any illusions, it was very quickly knocked out of me that whenever I went on to a building site, all the theoretical knowledge that I thought I might have had.
Out the window.
Oh yeah, no, the subcontractors ate me alive, you know, and all the bricklayers and the joiners would just quite literally just call it as it was, and it was a good, again difficult but good time, and just worked my way back up from the bottom in the construction with my dad, and then that went quite well for a lot of years. And then there was the big crash, 2010-11. I was working with my dad, and we built quite a successful business. And there was the Lehman Brothers crash around 2007-8. The time it sort of really kicked in over here was about 2009-10, and all the NAMA nonsense and all everything else that went with that. And after that, I think my dad lost a bit of the love for it as well, and he decided not to do it anymore. So about 2012 or 13, he bought out, and I just took it over on my own, and that's what I was doing until 3 years ago.
Yeah. And what was that like? Because the boys would have been, what, just starting big school then around that time? What was that like, going from being in a project with your dad to now being a business owner by yourself? Did you feel the pressure of that straight away, or?
You don't want to make any mistakes, and it was a difficult time because the market was only starting to correct. You know, and I remember thinking, you know, we either take a gamble here now and spend some money. We had some money left that we'd sort of gathered up over the years, and we spend that money now in a market that's quite shaky, where we try and sort of consolidate and don't do a whole lot. So we just went for it and spent all of the money and bought a few properties and a few things here and there, and thankfully the market went with us. But yeah, it was quite scary. There was a lot of times, it's one of the reasons that I'm not doing it anymore, because the banks are, especially after the crash in 2007-8, and the banks got extremely greedy, even more greedy. And any project you do, or any project now, if you want to borrow money, and it's extremely difficult to develop, because I didn't build for anybody else, I only built for myself and sold on. So I would buy the land, get planning on it, pay all the fees on it, get the architects involved, get the engineers involved, and then build it and pay for all of that. So it takes a lot of money to buy the land, pay the fees, pay the professionals, and then pay to build it. So you've got to sort of do one thing at a time. And you have to borrow money from the bank to do that. At sort of small size, even at mid size, and the bank always would want you to put your house as part of the collateral on a site.
And if the math is right in my head, that was also the time you took on the role, or close to anyway, you took on the role of chairman of the Old Boys. So before we talk about that bit, how did you end up going from when you were living here playing with St Mark's for 17 years to making the move to play with the Old Boys in Belfast?
As I said, I had a fantastic time with the fantastic time at St Mark's. They were so good to me, always were, and they were unbelievably generous to me throughout the whole time I was with them. But I'd moved back down into Belfast probably about, I'm trying to remember exactly when, but it must have been about 1996 or 7, and I was living in Stramelis, just behind Laganville's club, Prince Edward Park, and I would have been friends through the friendship band. I played for years in friendship band. I'd have known Brian Dunleavy for forever, and obviously I knew Ronnie and his son, and a lot of the sort of Old Boys, Jimmy and everybody from playing in the friendship band. And I always had a soft spot for the Old Boys, so I spent about a year or two just playing, when I wasn't playing with St Mark's on a Thursday night, and a Monday night I'd have gone down and played with Laganville, or to play with the Old Boys, or to play with Downshire, just to see sort of which one I sort of fit in with. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, the Misfits and the Old Boys sort of caught my attention. And then in 1999, the old boys were in Birmingham playing in Paganini, and Richard Evans was taking them, and I was sort of with them.
Was that for Europe?
For Europe, yeah, it was. It was one of the last. Well, we were the last one in 2004 with the championship section, but that was one of the Swan Song championship performances, and I remember being with them the whole trip, travelled with them, and then in the rehearsals with Richard Evans and everything like that, and I just thought, yeah, I want to be part of this.
Nice.
And there was a switch that flicked inside me at that trip, and then after that, it was near enough. I think the January of. It was around Christmas or the January of 2000 I joined the Old Boys, and I never looked back.
So 25 years. What was your, apart from the initial jump of this is something you want to be a part of, what was the first, before you took on the chairmanship, I'm not asking you to critique anybody, but what was your take on the potential of the Old Boys and how it was going, and what was your sort of, if you had to summarise that time in the Old Boys' history, that first sort of 13 years, what would that have been like?
Hugely enjoyable. I was coming from one night a week with St Mark's, playing in the Argery and playing in Scarva and things like that, which was great, and I'm not knocking it in the slightest. It was fantastic, and I loved every minute of it. But to go on and getting to play on TV with the Old Boys at whatever level it was, but it was chaotic. We didn't have conductors for the first few years. We had loads of different people coming in trying to conduct us, including Joe Castles, and Joe was playing a lot at the time, and he threw his hat in the ring, and Phil was involved, and Phil's brother Alan, and there were just lots of different conductors, and it was just a shambles. You didn't know if we had a rehearsal from one night to the next. And then Grenville took us for a while, Grenville Moore, Peter's father.
Any regrets at the early days of the chaos about moving?
Not the slightest. No, as I said, I was coming from one night a week, so to me,
didn't bother?
No, it was still, I remember coming in and playing. I think I started on second cornet. I think that's when I started on second when I moved in, and I remember sitting beside Wesley McDowell, second cornet, and I was absolutely terrified because Wesley would give you a bollocking for the slightest bit of wrong notes, like he was playing away, and Wes will tell himself, they were not all his notes were right, but if I played a wrong one, you were in for a hell of a bollocking. But never once did I. And we did a lot of external contests back then, even though we were sort of scratching about. We would have done a lot of contesting in Scotland, and it was just fun. It was fun, and it was a completely different level to what I was used to playing at.
Yeah,
I enjoyed learning. I sort of learnt more, and I really sort of started to enjoy my playing again more whenever I was back in the Old Boys.
Yeah. And what, whenever you became chairman, what was your motivation to take on that role? Did you catch a vision, or did you see potential in the band and you would like to do it a different way, or what was?
No, I've been chairman at St Mark's for, I can't remember, 6-7 years, and I just got in the habit of, you just sort of knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
Although it was a different band, you sort of got in the way of what was involved in being a chairman, and
Leaders will lead.
Whenever I got into it, it was one of those things. Nobody really wanted to be chairman, and it wasn't that I stood up and went, I'm going to change. Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't that you sort of like had this calling and you decided you want to be a chairman. It just was one of those things that was sort of thrust upon you. Now, at the time, whenever I took over, Joe Sharp was the secretary, and Joe and I, to be fair, made a very, very good team. And I'd like to think that, between the two of us, we, let's just say, righted the ship and got things back on track. Not all on track, but just made things a wee bit more formalised and consistent. Like the band was very good. Like even I'm looking, that's from 2010. Or is it 2006? We did. It was 2006 and then 2010 again. I think we did a couple of trebles.
Right.
We had a couple of years where we won everything. That was just sort of the way the band was.
I'm gonna call you on that. That's not true, and the band has that. They think that. But that's not what happened.
We had an unbeaten year in
2013. It was between 2010 and 2013. Because I hear the old guard celebrate that in the band,
let me have something here.
No way. And I think that the point about asking you about this stuff is that I think that the band, sometimes people think the old boy started after COVID because of a new conductor and all that stuff, but that's not even slightly the case. The band has a really great history in the 21st century, but the golden era, if you want to call it that, or the period that you're trying to talk about, didn't happen until much later, and it was after 2010.
But I remember from we were always a band. The band was always a band that could get a result. They were never consistent, and that was because you had no idea. You had some superb players. You had, the band had superb players. You had Bingy playing at his prime there. You had Phil Whiteside playing on. Or Davey Whiteside playing SOP. You had Alan still on youth. You had a trombone section that could have played in the Halley Orchestra. Perm 1 from 6. There were always, you had a prime McCann. You had a prime Shots. You had Paul McCulloch.
So my question, I suppose, is this:
Prime Joe.
What do you think was the factor that took the band so long to get to that illustrious or elusive travel? What was the big factor? I suppose that's what I'm trying to get.
Leadership and direction.
From
everybody concerned in the band, from the players to the committee to the conductor.
Right. Did that happen overnight, or was there resistance to change? Or?
No, but it's still not. Like, I mean, you look at it now. You see how difficult now you've taken it. We had that transition whenever we were working together, before you sort of took absolutely everything, and you see how much of your life and your emotion you have to put into it now just to keep things going in a straight line. It is so hard. It's so hard. And then you've got to add an element of luck into it, because if you knock your pan in and a band is working their socks off and you're getting 28, 29 at rehearsals, and you go, and for whatever reason an adjudicator gives you a 5th position when you should have won it, which has happened to us a couple of times, it just completely derails the band. I know we're in a real purple patch and we're on this unbeaten run at the minute, but it'll end somewhere. Of course it'll end somewhere. It always will, and it'll end because it should end, or it'll end because of a mistake that an adjudicator's made, or somebody's had a different opinion than everybody else, from an adjudication point of view. And those are the harder bits to pick up. A bit of luck. You need a bit of luck, like everything in life, like completely and totally everything in life, especially your employment career and everything. You need a bit of luck in life, and timing and a wee bit of luck. Things go your way, it's great, but just because we're winning doesn't mean things are right or the best.
Yeah.
Like there's moments when I listen back where I've had a busy paperwork week in work. So I've had YouTube on in the background, and they've been listening to a lot of the old sort of recordings we have, and there are moments. There's the band we had 10 years ago there's not a patch in the band we have now around the band, but I think our sound at moments was better back then. I think our sound and our tuning and our intonation now would give me, we're still winning things, we're unbelievably consistent, and we've become a contesting machine, which is something we've learned to do. Going back to whenever I was talking about playing in St Mark's, there's just something over time, and we've been very lucky with the young kids that we brought through the band, Connor and Louise and Tori and Andy and everybody else involved. Like, they've all become contesting monsters and don't have any nerves and just get on stage and play, and Dan and people like that. But just because we're getting results doesn't, I still think to be the band I think we would like to be. I think the next step for us, keep the consistency, which is difficult, which is hugely difficult, but I think we need to work on our sound again. I think our sound is maybe, we've lost a wee bit of the sound that we had.
Where do you think that's come from?
It's maybe a price you pay for consistency. because I remember Spoons and I doing contests with him and me in the back row. And not just the back row, I'm just happening to talk about, because that's, you know, it's not a good thing. Sure. Him and me in the back row, and our soprano player, Davey, or whoever it was, or Billy G, whoever it was going to be at the time, doesn't make it a good thing. But sometimes having lots of players, if we don't work on getting the sound of lots of players the same, it alters just the overall sound of the band. And I would far rather have the consistency, far rather 100%, and it's just not me in any way, shape or form criticising what we're doing at the moment, because I've never been happier in my life enjoying playing with Cornet in such an amazing band, and everything you've done has been absolutely amazing. Really has been absolutely a massive part of where we are now. But I think
it's not me. Because I go back to it. You always didn't start after COVID, and that's why I was asking you and prodding you a wee bit about 2013 and trying to get your memory to jog that the consistency came from the strong leadership. Not that we didn't have that before from strong leaders, but the direction from you. And I wondered, were you sitting there as a player thinking, I can steady the ship here? Or you used that phrase earlier and it corrected yourself. But the point I'm trying to make is the ingredients were always there. There was obviously something missing at that time 10 years ago to make it consistent, because the always were a force then.
Joe and I remember Joe Sharp and I made a pretty powerful, I think we were successful and we ran a tight ship, and we had many a chat that it wasn't about having 30 on the stands every time. It was about having the right players in the band, that we could have the right sound, and it worked. Now, it wasn't consistent. It's nowhere near as consistent with what we are now, and it's just not, because I know it breaks my heart whenever I hear, oh, Agnes Street they were better, and Tampa were better. I mean, they were amazing bands. They weren't as good as I think we are now, but and I maybe rose tinted glasses at 10, 15 years ago, but whenever I listen to some of the recordings, you know, I listen to some of the recordings now, and it is technically really tight and really musical. There was something that Johnny brings out of us, but for me, if there's one thing we could work on, this is not a negative. I don't know why this got to where it is, but you know, it's not a negative. One thing we should work on is our sound. It's our sound and our intonation across the band.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair synopsis, and it's only people like you that have been in the band in 25 years can have that opinion and be listened to, because you were there.
Oh, no, it's not, but it's funny. But again, your memory degrades. I'm going off recordings and things like that now. We're not. Thankfully, we're not listening to. It's not like me sticking on an old Agnes Street one on an LP or something like that and hearing the scratches and the bangs. You know what I mean? It's digital recordings that are sitting there. You know, and I'm not saying it's better. The band isn't better, but it wasn't bad either. You know, it was pretty tight, and we would have had. As I say, the corner men were always very good, but you know, the leadership wasn't great, and the consistency was poor, and the drive was poor. It was missing, and all of that's changed. Consistency has become superb because of the effort that you put into it, and the conductor puts into it, has completely just turned that part of it around now, completely.
But again, I'm going to say it again, it's not just me. You were very lucky to have Joe, who does all the work in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very lucky to have Tori, who does a lot of work in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's only having those relationships in the background keep you going. But I was also very lucky, which you maybe didn't have, to have you as somebody to learn from, take over a successful thing and just try and keep it going. I'm going to take a wee pause before we talk about the post-COVID era so far. 2020, the world changes for everybody, but you, not more than most, but more than me, you have to make a massive decision coming out the back of COVID that changes your day-to-day life, and then that followed up with another decision with the band. What was it like having built a business out of tough times, becoming really successful, having to walk away from that?
Well, I think it comes as well. The older you get, there's nothing like experience, as I said from earlier on there. your strategy changes in life, and you start to become a little bit more defensive of any position that you may have gained. And that makes it sound like life is a game, but it is sort of. You know what I mean?
Solid,
You've got to. Yeah, it is. COVID was horrendous for the building game for lots of builders. A lot of small builders like myself didn't take wages because all the accountants at the time thought, and it was the most tax efficient way was to take dividends. So we wouldn't have paid you wouldn't have paid yourself a wage, but you would have taken a dividend every year to basically work as your wages, because it was a very tax efficient way of doing it. But when furlough happened and the world shut down and residential was seen as non-essential, we were shut down for 18 months or so. And because we've been taking dividends and we had no salary income and no pay, it was all based on PAYE records. We got zero, got nothing. And any money that the government did give out was money you had to give back. It was only a loan, which was time bound on a 0% interest, and then after that, if you hadn't paid it back, it kicks in at 8% or whatever. So some of those I'm still chipping away at. But yeah, so we had 18 months, and I just started a very big project, a big 5,500 square foot house, a one-off build. So as I say, the land was bought, the house was built, we were only doing the foundations, and COVID hit when we were actually building the underbuilding for it. So then we had 18 months of no work and no income, and then whenever it did fire back up again, the tradesmen were all getting furlough money from the government, and didn't want to come back to work, and they had basically decided that a lot of them decided that they didn't like the building game anymore. If you've had 18 months of sitting in a house and the government paying you money, why would you want to go stand and break your back and wreck your shoulders working on a building site in the rain and the cold and the snow? So a lot of them never came back, and it made it very difficult, and the cost of materials, because of all the problems we had with transport after COVID, and then the cost of labour just went. Some materials tripled, the cost of labour doubled. So you're sitting there just about to start a house, you're taking it out of the ground, it's the only thing you have on, and you've got to restart it, and all of a sudden your costs have at least doubled, but your end price hasn't risen at all. It's still stayed where it was. So the only things getting affected is your bottom line, is your profit. A lot of the banks got very greedy, so whenever we were borrowing money, anybody borrowing money now as a developer, the bank will screw you to the wall. They'll charge you an arrangement fee, and then they'll charge you minimum of 6 points over base for the money, and then they'll ask for the deeds of the property that you're working on, and then as a final kicker they'll ask for the deeds to your house. And whenever we sold that property, we were lucky enough to sell it and we got out of it okay. Liv just said to me, no more. She said, we can't at our age put the house up as collateral against any borrowings. And to do it as a mid-sized builder or small sized builder, you need to borrow money. The scheme doesn't work. You would need 5 million sitting in cash to actually buy land, develop it, and then build it out, and before you need to sell it again. You'd need millions of pounds, which you don't have. So we just made a decision, right? No, we're not going to do that. So.
And was that an emotional conversation to have with your dad as well, considering the journey had started with him, the two of you, and then by yourself, or? Less
so than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be a whole lot worse. I really did. I was actually not quite. I was extremely nervous and worried about that.
I think we were on the phone in the car before you went up, and I remember I was surprised the car got there, to be honest. But
yeah, so
he took it okay though.
He did. No, he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He understood completely. And then I put my name out for a few jobs, and was lucky to touch with the one that had been there for 3 years now. Just coming up in 3 years now, doing that one. And yeah, it's nice having a wage coming in every month, so it is.
Yeah, and I remember at that time, because you and I were working on the committee together, and I remember we were calling each other about loads of stuff. But at that time, the organisation of the band, as well as your own personal life, kicked off, because we took a massive decision at the time to change conductor, and I know the personal stress that put on both of us. What was that like, all that going on in your life at the once? Was there times when you could have just thought, I'd love to walk away from this because this is meant to be fun, or what's the...
No, well, I say that now, it's easy looking back in hindsight. I'm sure it was, and I'm sure it was on the phone to you. I'm sure it was, but I don't remember it being like that. As I say, there's been enough things happening in your life that I think that, you know, you just sort of take it for what it was. We knew it was the right decision. We both knew at the time it was 100% the right decision to make, and I think we've been proven right on that the whole way along. There's nobody could really question that. But I was getting to the point where, and that's why I sort of stepped back from the role. I was starting to enjoy playing the cornet a wee bit more, and I just wanted to enjoy playing the cornet. And when you're being the chairman, if you're on the phone all the time and you're doing all those things, you don't really get the time to practice. You just don't. And then 2 young boys, and you want to be part of their life, and you're going to have that now and having that now. It's just, you know, your priorities sort of change a wee bit, and I found I wasn't enjoying playing the cornet as much, and if I'm not practicing as much, then you're not prepared as much, and then that's when we talked earlier on about nerves. Whenever you go to play, I'm a great believer, if you've practiced hard enough, you'll not be nervous, and you'll not have any nerves, or you'll have them under control when you go on stage, because you know you're capable of doing whatever you need to do when you get on stage.
Yeah.
So that's why practicing now, I'd like to spend a wee bit more. I know it maybe doesn't seem it, but I do spend a wee bit more time practicing now than I used to.
And how have you found that coming back after COVID? You're 3 years into the job now. Mm-hmm. We're 3 years into this new conductor tenure. Mm-hmm. How are you finding it now, 3 years on?
Loving the band. As I say, the band is amazing. You're doing, and I know we're not. The group, the committee now are doing an amazing job. And the band are working very hard because you're pushing them very hard. And Johnny's done a fantastic job and has added a huge amount of music. And Phil as well have done amazing jobs with the band. I don't think I've ever enjoyed playing with the band as much. But I enjoy playing with the band now, which is completely different. It's really weird not having to get up. It took the first proper 6 months of it. It was difficult to not be the one that was getting up and just talking nonsense in each rehearsal that you do. You get up and not nonsense, but you know what I mean. You gotta always, there's something you've got to always say, or as Johnny loves to say, has anybody got on for the good of the band? You know that old chestnut, and you're just like, no, I don't. But you got to think of something. You know, the first 6 months is quite not difficult. Strange was the word. Not getting up, but now, it's great now to see now. And in work, when we're getting ready for a contest, I'll try and get half an hour a day and in work every day, and then depending on what we're doing, maybe practice the weekends and evenings as well. Where I never would have got that when I was doing German stuff. Never.
You did German for 10 years, and you already talked about it briefly there. It was a bit weird the first 6 months seeing somebody else stand up and say things for the good of the band or whatever Johnny's asked you to do. Was it difficult, or were you nervous, I suppose, about all the hard work that you'd done and Joe had done for 10 years in the early years with Joe as well? Seeing that be handed over and being like, this could go to pot very quickly. I had absolutely no doubt, and I know it sounds like I'm blowing smoke up your backside, but you don't need it. Like, because I worked with you long enough, and I was able to see that, like, what Tory's a hugely capable young girl, and you know, Ryan has turned out to be a fantastic guy. Brian's turned into a great librarian as well. The chairmanship role is, as you see it, you're just sort of trying to make sure nobody falls out with anybody, which can't happen, as we know. And you're basically trying to make sure everybody else turns up and wants to come to the band. And that's what your role is. You're making sure people want to come to the band and be part of the Old Boys, which is what you're excellent at. That's what your forte is. The other people do a lot of the real hard work, you know what I mean? I think that was one of your biggest strengths in Chairman. I can remember, and I've said this to you 100 times, I can remember my first trip with the Old Boys was away to Montreux in the Europeans, And on the way back, walking through the airport, just coming out of it, you came alongside me, and that 10-minute chat had sold me to the old boys. And I think people think because I am the one getting up and standing and talking, it isn't. People don't want to be in the old boys because of the committee or a leader. They want to be in the old boys because it's a nice environment to be in. Yes, at the minute, contest results have gone our way, but that's a huge part of that is luck. We know that. But it's also that we've created an environment, everybody, not just the committee, is welcoming and fun and people want to be a part of it. And there are times when it becomes uber serious, I understand that. But being part of a group of people, the whole group of people, that you know the week of a contest when we do 4 nights, there's only going to be maybe 2 seats missing because somebody's got a birthday, work or something like that. That's down to everybody. And that for me is the biggest attraction or biggest reason why I love being in the band. What's the biggest thing you've enjoyed or best experience you've had with the old boys in your 25 years?
Oof. Best experience. I thoroughly enjoyed Palanga and enjoyed everything in bar. I remember sitting in the own choice and just knowing that we hadn't done it. And it was the most soul destroying feeling. And I was cross for an hour and then I managed to just forget about it, and I had a fantastic night with some people at the after party, and I had an absolute blast that night. But probably overall with the old boys was one of the prouder moments was 2004 when we played St Magnus. We were the first band, and it was the last. Says a lot about our performance. We were the last Northern Ireland band to play in the championship section in the Europeans, and we played St Magnus. We premiered it off a #1 draw, and thankfully nobody else knew what it was supposed to sound like. And there were 3 rap solos, just 3 sort of rap breaks in the middle of the St Magnus, and I remember being absolutely terrified. I didn't sleep for a week before we went to Scotland. I was in Glasgow in the concert hall, and my son Josh went to uni there, and every time we went, I'd always take a wee walk up the steps and remind myself of what it was like going up into the concert hall. But I remember the night before going up and walking into the hall and the day of it, and it was absolutely terrifying. And got up, and thankfully the solos went okay in St Magnus, and I felt like on the next day we played the versions on the bass team as your own choice. It was 2 separate days, and I remember coming back a second day and thinking it was like, I thought it was Roger Webster, because they played a couple of wee solos in St Magnus quite well, and it's one of the bits that sat with me the most for me. I felt like $1 million off that night. So.
What do you want to see for the old boys in the next 10 years?
I'd like it to. It is a happy band, like every band. It's not always. It sounds very parochial and twee and sound like a couple of other bands that we know who would say that. But anybody who guests for their band and comes along would know we are a very tight, personal band. We are, and we do. It's not just a Facebook or social media sort of nonsense that some other people put on. We are actually a tight-knit band.
I brought that up with Galvin when we did his podcast, that I think because we don't post it on Facebook all the time, people think that we aren't, but actually most of us live in each other's pockets, either via the phone or together. One of my highlights this year obviously was Holland, but actually the night we all had in Enniskillen. And I don't think we took one photograph and put it on Facebook, but the amount of videos, and photographs that circulate around everywhere, and I just think, I'm kind of glad we're like that.
But do you know what? And I definitely think one of the best telltales that you don't need to explain to anybody is that if we're going on a trip, if we're going to a contest, no matter what we're doing, if it's a big gig in a church, if it's on a long plane flight, or if it's just a drive up somewhere. I can be in a car with quite literally anybody in the band.
Yeah.
I mean anybody.
Yeah.
Any single player.
We don't do assigned seating on the planes or anything like that.
But you'll sit and you'll chat and you'll talk to them, and everybody gets on with everybody else. Doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter which player. There's not one player sitting there going, oh God, that night I hope to God I don't sit beside them. and you'll be talking to somebody different. But we're walking to go on stage, you'll be talking to, well, you know what I'm like before we go on stage, I'm waffling like a washing machine. But you'll be talking to everybody, and I think that's more of a sign where, and in bands before I've always sort of had, there's been cliques where a group of players will stay amongst themselves, or you know, trombones or something like that, would always stuck with themselves and things like that. But now everybody talks to everybody, and it's a truly friendly band. You know what I mean? I think it is just one of those things where.
And I think one thing I noticed about that, funny, at last night's rehearsal, I don't know when this is going out, but at last night's rehearsal, was it Thursday? Yeah, Thursday, because today's Friday. Andy Milligan and I were talking about Big Ryan, who plays B-flat bass. We first met him in a scratch band called Festival Brass, and him and I played together. And when Ryan first came in, I had to try to talk to him, and he would have like sort of just mumbled along with me, but he's now become one of our best friends, and he said to us it's because he feels comfortable in the environment that he can reach out and speak. And I know, you know, the guy behind the camera here testifies to that as well. And there's a guy, sub-principal Mark Murray, who I've known my whole life, and I have seen a completely different side of him this last 2 years. He's one of the funniest guys ever.
Absolutely hilarious. Yeah.
But it's because he's been given that platform to do so. And that's where to go back to what I say about 10 minutes ago. It's everybody in the band's contributing to that we have that environment. And I think that's why we're getting results and consistency. And
there's no egos as well. That's another thing I think as well. You look at that front row. Lou could play with any band in England you want. Paul does play with nearly every band he wants in England. Yeah. Mark is an outstanding player, but just the king of the one-liner sits there, doesn't say anything, and then he'll just put out a hilarious one-liner. But ask him to play a wee solo, and he's absolutely fantastic, an amazing cornet player. Phil, we bring a pro over from England to play the solos. Phil steps up and does it, you know, with his hands tied behind his back. He's like, you know, not one ego amongst any one of those players. I think that's where we've no prima donnas in the band, where we always would have. And why I'm going back to when I say I'm talking about the old boys 10, 15 years ago, there were some amazing players, there really were, but they all had a wee bit of an ego. And okay, sometimes as a principal, growing up, you always thought that the principals have to have a wee bit of an ego, but I've slightly changed my mind on that one. I don't think you do. You can still be a performer and not have an ego, you know, you as long as your talent speaks for it. Yeah. Whether like a Lou doesn't have an ego, or Alan Harth doesn't have an ego, you know, they just get up and they play. Andy Milligan doesn't have an ego, Dan doesn't have an ego, Connor could get up and play on him, Drew could get up and play on him. No egos there, you know, where that old band had some superb players, but there definitely would have been the odd clash of egos in the band, you know.
Last question. You and I kind of made it our mission for the old boys to go away and get a victory outside of the UK and Ireland. I know you had COVID and were in your room struggling to survive before we played and after we played, but what did it feel like to finally get that win away from home?
I had in my mind when we went away and how I would celebrate a European win, and I just couldn't believe we were going to do it. I didn't, but as you say, I had COVID, and I just couldn't react. I just sat and enjoy and sweated in my shirt, you know. It was just in a puddle of sweat, and just thought how happy I was.
Your shirt was see-through.
It was amazing, but it's sort of weird. I thought it would be. I know the band. It is an amazing thing we did, but it's sort of become, this is what we do. Yeah. And it sounds almost cocky, and it's not, because we're not. And I don't want anybody to ever think we're cocky, because contrary to what everybody else thinks, we're the most uncocky band in the world. It just works. We've got a good band, and I think that's what annoys people. But it's just what we do. I was so pleased. But it was just another win. It was another one of those things, and it's just one of those things that we keep on doing. We've become a behemoth of a brass band, and we are gonna be a behemoth of a brass band for quite a bit longer, as long as the luck stays on our side and we have the like of you steering the bus. We'll all be sitting in the background, chewing our crowns, looking out the window.
That seems like a good place to end.
Do you want to pot that last shot there, Nige?
No,
Come on, still rolling. Pressure's on.
Alright, see, we'll go for one. We'll go for a wee tricky one if we can get it.
Well, hold on. Go reposition here.
That's what she said. Can't wait for the outtakes, Connor.
One more time.
First jump, Virgo. Big break. Yay!